Imagine I hand you $1 million, but there's a catch. You've got to exit stage left from life tomorrow. Would you take the cash? No? Well, that's because we all know that time is worth more than money, even if we don't always act like it. Today, we're going to explore 7 outdated thinking patterns that are keeping you chained to financial mediocrity. It's time to break free and fire up the rocket of your life into the open space of financial freedom. So, let's dive into these expired thinking patterns, shall we? Ever thought that your income is directly tied to the hours you work? Well, it's time to toss that idea out the window. Let's consider the tale of a man named Oliver. Oliver was a firm believer in the time equals money equation. He worked overtime, clocked in extra hours, and barely had time to breathe. He thought the more hours he spent at work, the more money he'd make. But, despite the overtime, his income didn't skyrocket as he'd hoped. You see, Oliver was stuck in a time-driven income mindset, where he believed that his income was directly proportional to his time. But what if I told you that there's a different, even better approach? Enter the concept of value-driven income. This is where the game changes. It's not about how long you work, but how much value you can provide in that time. You could work 2 hours a day, but if the value you're offering is immense, you could earn more than someone working 8 hours with minimal value output. Let's revisit Oliver. He switched gears, focused on enhancing his skills, and started providing more value at work. And guess what? His income increased significantly, despite working fewer hours. So, the question isn't how many hours can I work, but how much value can I bring? See, it's not about the hours you clock, but the value you bring to those hours. Leave me a comment on what you think of using only time to make money. This may amaze you, but do you still think that another degree will make you richer? Well, I hate to break it to you, but that's not always the case. Let me tell you a funny story about a bloke named Reggie. Reggie was a professional student. He had a bachelor's, 2 masters, and even a PhD in astrophysics. But Reggie couldn't change a light bulb or even make a decent cup of tea to save his life. His head was so full of theories, but when it came to practical knowledge, well, he was as useful as a chocolate teapot. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with seeking knowledge. But in today's world, we've moved from the industrial age, where degrees were the golden ticket, to the information age. Today, it's not about how many degrees you have under your belt, but how quickly you can learn, unlearn, and relearn. Knowledge isn't power anymore, it's potential power. The real power lies in action, in applying what you've learned. So, if you're thinking of spending another few years and a small fortune on another degree, in hopes that it will magically make you richer, think again. Instead, focus on acquiring practical skills, on continuous learning and adaptation. Remember, it's not about collecting degrees, but about learning, unlearning, and relearning. Ever heard the saying, "A penny saved is a penny earned"? Well, that's only half the story. There was a chap named Oliver who was a serious penny pincher. He'd squeeze every cent until the queen on his coins would cry out for mercy. Oliver amassed a small fortune with his penny pinching ways, but there was one slight problem. His pennies never grew. They just sat there in his piggy bank, gathering dust, not earning him a cent more. You see, Oliver was a victim of an outdated thinking pattern. He thought that just saving his pennies was enough. But the truth is, in our modern world, just saving isn't enough. You need to invest. That's right, folks. You need to put those pennies to work. Imagine if Oliver had invested his pennies instead of just hoarding them. They could have been out there in the world, working hard, earning him more pennies. And those pennies could earn him even more pennies. It's like a penny party that never ends. So, here's the updated saying for the information age. A penny saved and invested is a penny, and possibly even a dime or a quarter earned. It may not roll off the tongue as easily, but it's a lot more accurate. So don't just save those pennies, invest them and watch them multiply. Do you think all rich people are greedy? Well, it's time to rethink that. Picture this, a wealthy man. Let's call him John. Now, John's not your typical wealthy guy. He doesn't have a fleet of fancy cars, nor does he live in a mansion the size of a small country. He lives comfortably, sure, but he doesn't hoard his wealth. Instead, he uses his riches to support causes close to his heart. He funds scholarships for underprivileged students, donates to medical research, and even sponsors the local football team. He's a philanthropist, a benefactor, a helper. You see, John understands something that a lot of us often forget. He knows that wealth isn't about greed. It's about providing value. He became wealthy because he provided something of value to others, and he continues to use his wealth to provide value in different ways. And this is where the misconception of wealth equals greed comes crashing down. It's not about hoarding riches and being Scrooge McDuck, diving into a vault of gold coins. It's about how you use that wealth, the value you create, the lives you impact. So the next time you find yourself thinking that all rich people are greedy, remember, John, remember that wealth isn't about greed, it's about value. Remember, you can't attract what you hate, so don't hate the wealthy, become one. Ever thought life is just too hard? Well, maybe it's time to hit the gym. And by gym, I mean the metaphorical gym of life, where you flex your mental and emotional muscles. You see, it's not that life is inherently hard, it's that we sometimes lack the strength, wisdom, or value to tackle it head on. Imagine life as a marathon. The marathon isn't tough because of the distance, but because we might not have trained adequately for it. The same applies to life. If we invest time into developing our strength, wisdom, and value, we transform the seemingly insurmountable hurdles into manageable obstacles. Now let's talk about strength. It's not about how much physical weight you can lift, but about how much emotional and mental weight you can bear. It's about resilience, perseverance, and the ability to bounce back from setbacks. Next up, wisdom. It's not about knowing all the answers, but about asking the right questions. It's about learning from your experiences, both good and bad, and applying that knowledge to future situations. Finally, value. This isn't about your net worth, but about the worth you bring to others. It's about the skills, talents, and abilities you possess that can help others and contribute to the world. So don't complain about life being hard. Get stronger. Build up your strength, wisdom, and value, and watch as the hardness of life starts to fade into the background. Ever looked at a price tag and thought, that's too expensive? Well, maybe it's not the price tag that's the problem. Let's consider the tale of a man named Fred. Fred was a notorious bargain hunter, always hunting for the cheapest deals. Whenever he saw something he liked, he'd invariably sigh and say, that's too expensive. One day his friend asked him, Fred, do you think things are expensive? Or is it that you're not earning enough to afford them? Fred was taken aback. He'd never thought about it that way. He'd been so focused on complaining about prices that he hadn't considered the possibility of increasing his income. The moral of the story? Well, it's not about the price tag. It's about what you're willing to do to afford what you want. If you think things are expensive, maybe it's time to ask yourself, what can I do to earn more? So, don't complain about things being expensive, earn more. Ever thought money is hard to make? Well, maybe you're just not thinking creatively enough. Let's paint a picture. Imagine a man, let's call him Jack. Jack was always on the lookout for the next big thing, the next get-rich-quick scheme. He tried everything from selling magical weight loss potions to investing in ostrich farms. Yes, ostrich farms sounds a bit absurd, doesn't it? But Jack was determined. The funny thing was, Jack was a brilliant cook. His homemade lasagna could make an Italian chef weep with joy. But he never thought to turn his culinary skills into a money-making venture. It's not about finding just any money-making idea, but the right one that aligns with your skills, your interests, and your personality. Jack had the right idea all along. He just had to look in his own kitchen. So, don't think money is hard to make. Find the right idea that fits you.